Welcome to Stags and Media with SGHB. I'm your host, Sophia Gabriella Haber. In this series, I'm sitting down with inspiring Fairfield alumni who have found success in their careers within the media industry. In today's episode, I'm speaking with Senior Director, Head of Advertising Sales for US and Canada at Netflix, Doug Brodman, class of 2005. So yeah, it's so great to have you. I really
It's
appreciate
great
it.
to be here. Thank you for having me.
So first question, how are you? How is life right now? I know that you just
Life,
said that you saw your daughter's concert, your holiday concert, so that must have been nice.
yeah, it was good. Life is good. It's a busy time of year. This time of year, every year around the end of the year is always a rush business wise. It's always a rush family wise and gearing up for the holidays and some time off, but things are good. Busy but good.
Yeah, that's great. So today I want to walk through your life to see who Doug Brodman is professionally and personally, and also how does a Fairfield grad find this much success in their career? So I want to start from the beginning. Who were you when you were a kid? What were your traits and interests like? I know you grew up on Long Island, right?
Yep. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. I grew up on Long Island. I was born and raised out there, all the way up and through the day that I left for Fairfield when my family actually moved off the island at that time. But growing up for me, pretty core family unit. Grew up going to Catholic school my whole life, so continuing that into a Jesuit education at Fairfield was pretty important to me and to my family, which was great. Um, on the South Shore of Long Island, grew up beach baby. So grew up surfing. I passed that. That's something that I passed along and do with my kids now. So, we love the beach, spending time in the water, taking different trips to surf, things like that. Pretty heavy into sports, soccer, baseball. So life kept me busy. I actually started working at a pretty young age. I spent my time growing up working in restaurants, like bus tables, waited tables. And as I got older, that grew into things like actually bartending. I actually cooked for a couple of years in a restaurant as a sous chef. Work ethic to me was always something that was really important, and I wanted to start at an early age. It's something that I'm trying to kind of instill into my kids. I like being busy. I like being active. When I had the opportunity to take that on and start that process at a younger age, at around like 15, 16 years old, actually, I kind of jumped all over it. And it was great. It's something that working in a restaurant really teaches you resilience. And I think you don't really understand how much it teaches you around things like client service, right? And making customers happy and how that transcends into different experiences of your life for years to come. It's a really amazing experience, something I really hope I get my daughters into at some point in their life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really nice. It's really interesting to hear your origin story and where that work ethic came from, and starting from a young age working really makes sense. And talking about your passions too, of like cooking and sports, it definitely makes sense through your career working in sports a little bit. So,
Yep.
um, yeah, that's great. Um, so now I want to move into Fairfield, talking about
hmm
Fairfield. So you graduated in 2005, marketing major, business management minor. Can, first of all, can you set the scene of what Fairfield was like? What was the culture like from 2001 to 2005?
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, I've gone back to the university a couple times now, as a professional, to visit. I mean, the School of Business, for one, is a completely different universe than when I went there. It was the old building at the bottom of the hill, and now it's this beautiful, education facility, that it's turned out to be. So I think when I was there, it was a time that was a little bit different. We were less connected as students. I think about now, and social media and the role it plays in my life, my kids' life, and I'm sure what the role it plays in the life of students. It was different. Even how we access information for classes was different. I do feel things were much more slowed down than they are likely today, which was kind of nice, looking back. I stepped into Fairfield, knowing a handful of folks and friends from my high school that were going there as well. But it was definitely a culture that embraced meeting new people and finding ways to do that, and kind of living within the Fairfield community. So you felt that right away when you got there. And I think over time that, expanded, whether I was living on campus or off campus and spending more time in the school of business, meeting with other business students. You kind of go through phases of your life inside of undergrad. from stepping onto campus for the first time and just meeting a ton of new people and then kind of finding your group. And then you kind of grow in a pretty accelerated fashion in the 4 years that you're there before you step out into the quote unquote real world. So I think it was much slower time than it is today, but also very, very welcoming as a community. I've always one of the things that jumped out to me at Fairfield is you really get the university experience of an undergrad, but it does feel close to home in a sense. That it does feel like a tight knit group. It's a community that I've stayed connected to since leaving Fairfield, both personally and professionally. I still have a lot of friends from Fairfield. My wife and I met at Fairfield, so it holds a special place in my heart. But I think the tightness of the community is something that was really kind of transcends time and has stayed with me.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's really nice. And definitely hearing you talk about Fairfield then and now, it is definitely continued, like that tight-knit community. And it also makes sense that you felt like it was close to home since you went to Catholic school and like followed that path too.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's really interesting to hear about the culture then, and like me experiencing it now as like a current student. Um, and that's so nice that you and your wife met at Fairfield too. Do you have like a cute origin story of how you guys met?
I wish we did. I mean, it's on like most things at Fairfield, it was pretty happenstance, I think. She was in the business school, I was in the business school. We had a couple classes together, and then obviously Fairfield's such a small place that you would see, the same groups of people over and over and over again, whether that be in class or out at night or in the campus centers, things like that.
Mhm.
So we just met, over time, which was great. So I wish there was some sort of amazing story behind it. We did have our first date at the $3 movie theater and at Archie Moore's right in town. So like that's something that we've now taken our kids back to when we've gone back to the campus for basketball games and things like that. But yeah, we've been together since 2002 at this point, which is amazing. Yeah.
So you met pretty early on in your college.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's really nice. Yeah, it's so nice to hear about like the stagmate stories, and even if it's not like a perfect little story, it's super cute.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really nice. Also, what type of student were you? And also, did you have any? I know you said you always had that work ethic since you started working from a young age, but were there any kind of like negative qualities that you had when you were young that you grew out of now going into the professional world? Like, was there anything negative that you grew out of?
Yeah, I mean, for college in general, as a student, you're kind of exploring what you want to do and who you want to be. At the same time, you're having to do so much work, right? The classes and the core curriculum you have to get through is a lot for a 19 or 20-year-old to take on while contemplating the things that you want to learn more into or lean more into, and then ultimately who you want to be professionally, right? So I think for me, I'll admit, like, I didn't really know even all the way up and through senior year, like where I wanted to take the education that I had gotten at Fairfield and what I wanted to kind of manifest that into in my first job. So, um, always a hardworking student. I tried to get diverse exposure into different areas of the curriculum that Fairfield offered outside of the business school, even. That was always important. But then my focus, time, energy, and effort really landed inside the business school as I progressed through my four years. So I always tried to look and see, okay, if marketing was my major, what else can I look into in the world of finance or management to try and kind of round out what I was experiencing. So I felt good about that and my approach to what I was trying to pull out of my education. I mean, bad habits. I was a classic procrastinator, classic. Like I would always wait to the last minute. Very thoroughly prepared when the time came, but I would always wait to the last minute. And that's something that I've had to definitely drop in my career because you just can't operate that way in the
Right.
business world. That's something I think I probably fine tune and learned coming out of college and stepping into my professional life where it's, the preparation that goes into every single day is significant.
Right.
And I think that that's something that luckily I've gotten better at over time.
Right. Definitely. Yeah, it's very interesting to hear that you had that issue. because I was looking through your LinkedIn and looking at some of the recommendations people gave to you, and one of the comments was always ahead of schedule and like meeting deadlines ahead of schedule. So I wondered if you did ever have a time issue, which that's was there like any moment in your career in the beginning that like you remember that switch of like, okay, I need to get myself together and not be a procrastinator anymore?
I think things move at just a different pace once you step into the business world. You know, you can try and prep
Right.
for it throughout college and the programs that you take or the projects that you work on and things like that. But the pace is just different. And you have a lot of very high performing professionals surrounding you at any given time, and you feel that. So I think that's a combination of just pace of business, pace of life, and probably a little bit of pressure, right, to make sure that you're holding up your end of the bargain for the company you're working for and the performance you want to put forth. So I think that clicked pretty quickly for me once I kind of stepped into my first job.
Right. Oh, that's a perfect transition because I want to start talking about that too.
Sure.
What was your first job like? I know you worked at MediaVest on the Procter and Gamble account, and you worked there for
Yeah.
like 7 years and worked yourself up. So what was that like? What was going into the workforce like?
Yeah, I mean, it was funny actually. I ended up getting that job through a connection of a friend of mine in Fairfield. Her sister worked at the company, and we had met at her birthday party. And the next week, I had an interview, and 2 weeks later, I was about to start working there. So, again, it just goes to show like the Fairfield network has a funny way of working, even though it's a tight knit community.
Yeah.
Um, Stepping into it, when you think about advertising agencies, everyone's mind traditionally goes to like the world of Mad Men and like the creative agency side of things.
Mhm.
MediaVest at the time, which is a part of Publicis, which is one of, if not the largest media holding company on the globe, is more on the media agency side of it. So they act as
Right.
stewards of their clients' businesses in terms of how they're creating media strategy, planning activations of brands and campaigns, how they evaluate different channels of media and the effects it has on consumers, and then ultimately on their clients' businesses. So to me, it was almost like an MBA crash course in marketing and media coming off of business undergrad. I got firsthand exposure in terms of how an agency worked, the operating model that it has. It gives you exposure not only to brands and clients of agencies, but also the marketplace of publishers and media outlets that work with agencies. So, television networks, up and coming web companies at the time, that was a developing area of the business, online media, even traditional outlets like print, like you're getting exposure to all those things at the time in 2005 that, a client like Procter and Gamble, who is the largest advertiser in the world, is considering all those things. So, it was a crash course in how agencies are built and how they manage their businesses and how they manage the marketplace on behalf of clients. But I also got a firsthand seat and a view into Procter and Gamble, which is one of the most historied and storied companies in the world, and how they plan and build their business. So you're working on marquee brands like Old Spice and Tide and Febreze, and you're learning about Gillette and the history of that brand and how they consider connecting with consumers, and the role that agencies play there. And that's where I really got a full picture of like the media ecosystem. I think we learned a lot of the foundational elements at Fairfield, but seeing those worlds come together between a media outlet and a partner, an advertising agency and a brand and client, and getting a firsthand kind of view of that was I couldn't recommend it highly enough for students coming out of college, to take the time and the opportunity of sitting in the seat of an agency to get that view is probably one of the things that set me up for the entirety of my career.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it's that advice I've heard from other alumni that I've had on my podcast too about working for an agency and getting exposed to so much. It's so different to work for an agency versus like in-house for a company,
Yep.
from what I've heard. And also the thing about learning on the job too of like you school can teach you a lot of the foundationals like you said, and then it's a different world when you just get dropped into a job and it's very
Yeah.
different. So yeah, it's comforting to hear that advice that's it's like consistent throughout a lot of people who are successful in the career.
Yeah.
That's great. So now I want to go through your career. I know you worked for NBC, Google, Twitter, and now Netflix, obviously. So we can actually start. I want to talk about Google primarily.
Yeah.
Um, what was the company culture like at Google, and how did you fit into that?
Yeah, I mean, so when I went over to Google, it was 2014 when I started at Google. So Google, obviously been around since the early aughts, and so by the time I got there, it's massive, massive organization already, right? And one of the most successful companies in the world. So, when I stepped in at Google, it was a time in the sales organization where, they'd acquired YouTube many, many years earlier, right around 2005, six, I believe, maybe seven. And we were trying to figure out how to make YouTube a part of the mainstream media, right? And how to get brands to consider it differently than just a social user generated content outlet. So it was a time when YouTube was really embracing the world of the creator ecosystem, and thinking about their creators as premium content publishers, right? Because you think about the modern day consumer, they're not tuning in to primetime television at 8 p.m. on Thursday nights the way that they used to. They're getting the content they want and when they want it and how they want it. And YouTube was a powerful driver of that. So our team was tasked with figuring out how do we take that and translate that into brands so they think about, how they find their consumers at a time when linear television ratings are declining and the audiences are shifting from watching just in the television in their living room onto their phone, connected TVs and things of that nature. So our team was really focused on that. So we brought a bit of a different energy into the sales organization at the time in the US. So the culture there, I think, at that time for Google was like had built a really, really core an incredibly successful search business, and was getting started on the path of looking at how the core business of ads diversifies away from that. So YouTube was a major, major part of that, and that's what our team was kind of there to help build and drive, from a ads and a revenue standpoint on the sales side. At the same time, Google then kind of spun up into the holding company of Alphabet when we were there. So that was another change that the company went through while we were there. Launching their cloud and enterprise business was another change they went through. So the what I really learned in being at Google, which was kind of after my time at NBC, was the preparation for that. The only constant is change and evolution in this business right now. The traditional media outlets and the traditional media companies, worked a certain way for a long time. The companies that are most successful today are the ones that are able to stay hungry and continue to innovate and change and adapt. So for me, in my time at Google, it was it was learning that and building that muscle to almost never be comfortable with the status quo and just expect that things are going to continue to evolve. And as a salesperson, as a business leader, as a team leader, you need to be ready to evolve with it, and adapt and motivate your teams and kind of find that next opportunity. And I think I still have a lot of friends that are at Google that I think still see, and feel that today.
Right. Yeah, that's very interesting to hear. And I know you faced a lot of change in your career past that too, with Twitter and like moving to Netflix. So yeah, it's such a real thing in
Yeah.
the job market. Um, and I want to know, working in ad sales and working in sales in general, what do you think about you makes you successful in working in that?
I think right now, I mean, for me and my time in this business, relationships is still a really big part of it. I mean, I know where we're going from a tech standpoint and how much things like generative AI are powering the future of businesses, but advertising still very much is a relationship business. So I think one of the things that's helped me along the way is the relationships that I've built with partners at agencies or customers and clients or even colleagues along the way that have gone on to do other things and we've stayed connected. I have many colleagues at Netflix that I worked with at Google, who have now come back and we're now working together again. Like these are that's the best part about our business is a very, very small world. And I think your reputation precedes you, the relationship you build precede you and go with you along the way. So that's been a really big, um, I think, benefit for me in my career, is that I've been surrounded by really, really great people and really amazing talent that's helped me and make what I've been able to do that much easier, you know? And that's something that I think when I go back and talk to the university or come in and meet with students or consult with students who are coming out, like I try and reinforce that as much as possible. I know it sounds cliche, but it really is one of the things that will help make people, successful throughout the entirety of their career as they move from different positions or different companies and different jobs and different roles. Like, how you carry yourself and how you act, and how others kind of perceive you and want to partner with you is really, really important.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it definitely makes sense that that's a cliche because it's so true. Um, yeah, that's really nice to hear. And can you talk about at Netflix currently what your experience is like now, like
Yeah,
what your job is and what the culture is like there?
of course. I mean, Netflix is an amazing place. Netflix is a 25-year-old global media and entertainment and technology giant. It's a company that's reinvented itself many, many times over from the world of, DVD rentals by mail to what we are today, which is the largest, entertainment and streaming company on the planet. To my earlier point, companies that stay hungry, that innovate, that are able to see around corners on where they need to be and build is really exciting. And for me here now, Netflix was always a company also that said that they would never have advertising. And you look at where we are today, and we're 2 years into the launch of our ads business. So for us, we're very much a startup inside of a very, very established and successful large media entertainment company. So we're still building, which is exciting, but we have the support, obviously, of the greater Netflix around us. Culturally, Netflix is a place that really understands the value of talent and giving their leaders and all of their employees the ability to run their businesses independently, operate with freedom and responsibility. We think of ourselves more as a high performing team versus a family, like so there's a little bit of a different cultural nuance than some of the places I've been before. We want to operate as a high performing team. There are things that the company does to ensure that we maintain that level of performance. So it's really forced me even to rethink my leadership, my management style, the style of how I approach my business, how I approach my team, how I approach my customers. Like that is, it's really given me a different perspective. I think the most exciting thing about the company is just the potential right now that we have is just endless. I mean, you look at what we're doing and what we've built in terms of original programming, and we've got some of the biggest shows on the planet in programs like Squid Game and Wednesday and Stranger Things or Bridgerton. I mean, these are massive, massive shows. And then you look at that and you add in the fact that we now have the NFL coming to Netflix on Christmas Day, and we're taking on more live programming along the way. Like we're kind of breaking the traditional model in terms of how you do events or you eventize content. So that's exciting for me as an employee. It's exciting for me as a Netflix user and fan. And it's really exciting for me as a leader of our advertising business because it's going to be a super exciting proposition for brands and all of our advertisers. So it's been a 2 year journey thus far. I think we have so much more to do and so much more to build here. So I would say it's early days for us on the advertising side of the business, but Netflix evolves, iterates, and innovates at such a rapid pace, unlike any place else I've ever been, to be honest with you. And that's what's been the most exciting part about the journey here thus far.
Wow. Yeah, it's so cool to hear about these top companies that everyone in the world knows these top companies and to hear your experience actually in it and in the culture and like the different way that these companies function versus other companies. Um,
Yeah.
and it's yeah, you're right. It's such an exciting time to work for Netflix and ad sales and like the future is so endless, which is so interesting. Do you see yourself staying with Netflix in your career, or um, is that kind of like a tough question to answer?
I don't think it's a tough question. I think I yes. I mean, right now with like the opportunity that lies ahead and so much potential for growth in the company with our programming, as we build the actual infrastructure of our advertising business, um, I tend to look at career and opportunity based off like what's ahead, not what we've done already. So for me, there's so much more to do here. So I'd love to be here as long as they'll have me. And I think we just have so much potential. When you look at things, even like not only our domestic footprint, but our international footprint, where we're going to grow in other markets around the world. I mean, this is just the size of this business and the areas that we're growing into are really exciting, and that's what really keeps me motivated to either stay with a company, remain at a company, or want to grow with a company.
Totally. And how do you see Fairfield in you? If looking back at your Fairfield experience, do you see traits of your Fairfield self or learnings you were taught there that have stuck with you today?
Yeah, I think just the values in general, in terms of how I approach things, that's something that you carry with you from the time you grew up and all your experiences and my experiences at Fairfield. Like I'm a very transparent leader. I am very candid with my team, but also, I care deeply about this business. I care deeply about the people that I bring in to work on my teams. I care deeply about how we show up to our partners. And I think I also have a lot of trust in my team and the people that I surround myself with. So I do bring a lot of those values, I think, along with me. This notion of community, I talked about it when we first started our call. Like that's something that when you step into a company, you can kind of get that sense of community pretty quickly. And so as we've built the team at Netflix for sure, like we've created a group of people that I do think, rely on each other, trust one another. And that's just kind of a community reincarnate almost, right? So I do think, I take a lot of that with me. Like I said, luckily I've dropped some of the procrastination part of it. But I care deeply. And I think the other part is like I'm always trying to learn more. Like I really feel strongly about that. Like if I get too complacent and I think things are good and I kind of like rest on the status quo, then I'm not doing my job. So that ability and that want to keep pushing and learning more is a big part of what I try and bring forward also.
Right. Yeah, I really love how you went really full circle with that. It sounds like a really great conclusion. But yeah, that's all the questions that I have. So I really appreciate this and
Of course.
all your wisdom and insight. And it's so inspiring to see your growth from Fairfield to now with Netflix. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me and good luck to you along the rest of your journey.
Yeah, thank you.